After nearly 12 seasons as the Penn State football head coach, James Franklin has been fired. Welcome to the Straight from the Crest Emergency Podcast.
Welcome to the Straight from the Crest Podcast.
Welcome back to the Straight from the Crest Podcast emergency special episode today. First time ever in the podcast is 5 years that we've done this, and it's all because head coach James Franklin has been fired by Penn State football after 12 seasons. The 2016 Big Ten champion, who led multiple 10-win seasons in Happy Valley, has been relieved of his duties after nearly 12 seasons. Garrett's joining the podcast today, and Beck, as we are going to talk about the implications of this decision Penn State has made, what James Franklin has meant to Penn State, Dr. Patrick Kraft's words on James Franklin's release from the program, and we're going to talk about interim coach Terry Smith. First of all, I would like to just say that this was a very abrupt but responsible decision from the Penn State athletic department. It was a time where you have to realize what Penn State's trying to do and appreciate what James Franklin has done. I will say that to begin the show. Now I'd like to welcome in my great co-host. Garrett is back for the first time in 2 weeks. He had his bye week. Justin has his coming up. But Garrett, I'm going to go right to you here. When you first heard the news, what was your immediate reaction to this?
I was shocked. I was driving back from Lubbock. My wife had my phone and said James Franklin's fired. I'm like, there's no way. Thought she was just kind of screwing with me. And quick and decisive action. And I would say, Mikey, to kind of, build off of your opening remarks, anyone who is like celebrating this and like celebrating like that he was not the guy, I don't really identify with that portion of the fan base. Like, yes, there were a lot of frustrations. I think all of us in here wanted him to be the guy. The best situation for Penn State would have been for James Franklin to be the guy to lead you to a national championship. Because there's no guarantee that things get better, right? There's a lot of risk here involved. But I will say, Pat Kraft's, we know him a little bit, knows my family knows him a little bit, intense guy, really, really believe in his leadership. Very decisive, very much seems like a competent CEO of the athletic department. And you could see that him and coach had a pretty good relationship and a good rapport. And so that the last day, emotionally, it's man, this is you almost feel bad for him. He looked Coach Franklin looked defeated, right? You see that video of him walking out, sending his kids first. The fan base had enough. It doesn't matter how much money you're going to make. That's pretty tough. But the guy who had to deal the brunt of that emotional and clear that emotional baggage away to make the decision was Pat Kraft. And he seems very confident in the decision he made. And I think at least everybody in the bubble of Penn State knew this had to happen. And to just rip the Band-Aid off right away and not wait, I think shows the commitment to excellence that this program is going to continue to chart on. And so, there's so much to unpack, but yeah, just pretty shocked that they actually did it. And then we actually did this, and it doesn't mean it's a happy thing. I do think our chances of seeing a national championship in the next decade have gone up due to this. So whether it happens in 3 years or 10 years, I don't know, but this was a move that had to be made if you wanted to reach the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I agree with the absolutely everything you said, especially the first thing. We stand with Coach Franklin. You're kind of a horrible human being to wish on anyone's downfall, especially a guy who was so much enrooted into the Penn State community. I mean, Garrett, you sat next to him at a lot of wrestling matches. I sat next to him with you at 2, and he was and outside of that, we had many other interactions with him, but that was he cared a lot about Penn State, and he cared a lot about the players. Justin, you were also driving Sunday when the news broke. Is that correct, or did you have a pit stop?
Yeah, I was watching the Steelers game in Pittsburgh, so I checked my phone in between plays, and I was like, oh man, they actually did it. So I was surprised to see it. Maybe surprised isn't the right word. I think last week I said I didn't expect us to fire Coach Franklin midseason, but I also didn't expect us to lose to Northwestern at home. And I think, that 3-game skid, it's too much. And then Drew goes down as well. It's too much to continue going. And I do appreciate that they ripped the Band-Aid off instead of waiting until the end of the season, because truthfully, the next 3 games don't look like wins to me. Like, I could see us starting this year 3-6. And it's crazy that we were, in my estimation, a play away from probably being 6-0 right now. If we make that stop on 4th down in overtime against Oregon, this season is completely different. And I think one thing that Garrett said that I very much resonate with is I wanted Franklin to be the guy. Right? How could you not? How could you root against your head coach? I truthfully believed again this year, even when we had 2 losses last week, there was a part of me, the delusionally hopeful Penn State fan of me, thought maybe he can figure it out and he can turn it around. And the season's still in front of us. I think when the season actually ends week 6, though, with the expectations that we had coming into this year, it's the decision that Kraft had to make. So definitely disappointed, really sad with how the season went out, and very appreciative of what Coach Franklin did for the program.
Yeah, this is a guy that averaged, not counting the Mickey Mouse COVID year, this is a guy that averaged 10.5 wins per season, 10.3 to be exact. He led us to and won multiple New Year's Six Bowls. He finished with 104 wins, which is actually tied for second with the late, great Rip Angle. But just a guy who really embodied what Penn State was. And I mean, I was obviously very shocked it did happen in this, but I think the belief in hearing Pat Kraft's statement today is to get ahead of the movement, which I think is a very, very tough thing to do, but it's ultimately the right decision. If you know in the future that you don't plan to keep James Franklin, now is the time. And that helps out both sides. That lets James Franklin secure a job if he would like to, whether that is in television or coaching. It gives him time to reset almost. Because if he would have been dragged out this year, especially without Drew at quarterback, which we'll get into the show Thursday. I don't want to talk about any Iowa. I don't want to talk about Northwestern. We're going to do that on our Thursday show. But to just have that cloud draped over James Franklin's head of the end of the year, because usually a coach knows. Usually it's a last victory lap. Usually he knows. I'm sure there was conversations going on there. But today, Pat Kraft took James Franklin's noon slot media availability and addressed the media, just kind of explained the situation, his decision to move forward without James Franklin. And he ultimately said that this decision came following the loss to Northwestern. He said he went into his office and Lash, James Franklin's office, and had to break the news to him. Franklin was able to speak to the team about it. And after the decision was made to release James Franklin, interim head coach Terry Smith, who's been with Franklin. He was Franklin's first hire at Penn State, former cornerback coach, former Penn State wide receiver in the 90s, who Joe Paterno actually called the best receiver he's ever coached at the time, of course. But Garrett, what's this mood like in the Penn State locker room right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of devastation. We saw a lot of the outpouring from the players. And, to kind of touch on your point that you made, a little bit earlier, where when you're in State College, it's a small town and you're fortunate enough to kind of be around the athletic department, you get to interact with coaches. Growing up, you got to interact with Coach Paterno a lot. I think that's what brought, a lot of like togetherness and why everybody felt so attached to him and still feels attached to Coach Paterno. And like, you feel the same if you were closer to Coach Franklin. Not that any of us were close to Coach Franklin, but like, he was very authentic and very genuine and very kind when you were around him. Right. And like, I just kind of wish that he showed that more to the public. There was certainly a hands-off guardedness that he had. And I don't think it did him any favors, because obviously everyone who's close to him has really come to love him a lot. The players love him. really a player's coach and has turned into that mode. I do think with that, there has been some slippage of, how the team has performed on the field just from when adversity strikes, there hasn't been the greatest response through his tenure. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. When things are going well, it's just kind of the momentum builds up. When things have not gone well, things have cratered like this. We've seen this a couple times. So, the mood in the locker room, I think, from an emotional standpoint, is a little bit of what we've felt sadness. Now they felt it 100 times that. So I do think that we heard from a couple people that we know that were on the staff and know Terry Smith, like no better person to step into the role. None at all, to kind of right the ship for the rest of this season. And I think, you follow Scott Paterno, Joe Paterno's son on Twitter, like a lot of great points, that the same points that Pat Kraft made, like everybody needs to be showing up for these kids now, the rest of the season. Like this is an objectively hard position for them to be in. As frustrating as their performance has been on the field, no doubt. And there's something to be said for, man, like, you could have prevented this a little bit, if you were a little bit tighter in the last two games on the field and didn't let things drop after Oregon. And so we won't get too much into that, but it's got to be a lot of devastation. I also think the writing was on the wall a bit, and the reasonable minds in there will come to the conclusion that, like, at a certain point, you got to think about the program, and those who don't think about the program probably won't be here in the future, and those who will be the ones that will be remembered by this fan base and the program going forward down the road.
Beck, interim head coach Terry Smith, he's a Whippeal boy from Aliquippa, has a lot of background and is really deeply enrooted in this Penn State community now. I mean, he's been here as long as Franklin. He's seen 2 promotions in that last. What's it like to have a guy with the familiarity to the program and an actual Penn Stater who played here, as opposed you oftentimes see an interim coach really have no ties?
Yeah, I think that it matters a ton, and it's going to come down to the pride aspect of there is still something to play for. And when you have somebody that wore the jersey and respects Penn State and cares about it as deeply as Coach Smith does, I think that he'll be able to send that message and galvanize the team and put out a respectable product the rest of the year. I'm happy that they promoted from within, or obviously it's an interim head coach, they're going to promote from within, but I'm happy that they didn't go with just a coordinator route and that they picked somebody that was an emotional leader of the team and somebody that truly cares and respects what it means to be a Penn Stater. Not that the other assistants don't, but Terry Smith obviously has a very special relationship with Penn State. So I'm happy that they did that, and I'm hopeful that he is able to turn it around and he's able to get the team a little bit of mojo back, because truthfully that's, we say we're not going to discuss, but truthfully that's what it feels like. It feels like a team that kind of lost their desire to play, and you hate to see it, and you hate to see it for the players. You hate to see it for Coach Franklin too, because I'm sure that he could feel it for the past 2 weeks when in practices leading up to UCLA, leading up to Northwestern. I'm sure he could feel it, and he was trying his best to change it, and ultimately he just couldn't. So hopefully Terry Smith can, and there's still the rest of the season to play, and you feel for the players, and you got to be there for the players. And if you're a fan of Penn State, you should show up and you should support them.
Yeah, I agree. The other domino or the trickle effect is, as interim Terry Smith is now the head coach, Jordan Lucas, who is also a Penn State great, who was an analyst, he's now the defensive backs coach. So that's all the shuffling that we know right now. We hope, obviously, for our friends on staff and everyone else, that they can kind of stick together. But I'm excited to watch this team play. I really am. I'll root for them. If Justin was the long snapper and AJ Youngmark played quarterback, my dumb brain would still be convinced they'd win a game. No shade to AJ, but that's where we're at. So with that being said, a new era of football at Penn State has started. Also, I want to talk about Drew a little bit. Prayers to Drew, obviously, just an awful way to go down at Penn State, just coming in with so much. And I think the kid dealt with so much pressure coming in since he stepped foot on campus as the number 1 player, 5-star recruit. Obviously, the guy sat behind Clifford for a year, but just a horrible way to see him go out there. But a new era started with Ethan Grunkmeyer at quarterback, Saturday night at Kinnick, and Terry Smith leading this gutted team, and that's really what they are. But this opens up a new, fresh opportunity for Penn State football, and hopefully, Garrett, like you said, we don't know how this turns out. We don't know. In 2 years from now, we could be doing a show talking about how Penn State defeated Texas in the national championship, or we could be talking about how the next hire was an absolute disaster and James Franklin is at Florida right now, or UCLA, or Arkansas.
Mhm.
And that's the gamble in it. It's a gamble. There's no clear cut, yes, Franklin was fired, let's celebrate. No, he's gone, that's the worst decision. It's somewhere in between. It's going to lay in the median. That's what it's going to do. But we are going to do a draft on this show like we do every week, with either alumnus or our favorite Penn State players, which we did. This is our wish list to be the next head coach at Penn State. So we'll each get 3 chances, 3 picks a piece. You can't repeat picks. Just give me a name and a couple notes on why you think this person should, or maybe it's a dreamer that you want out there. But Beck, I'll let you get first pick here since you haven't got a score close to being right.
Okay, all right. I don't think you got a score close to being right last week either. It's been.
I wasn't on the pod last week, but I had Northwestern 22-21. So.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's been a tough 3 weeks for the scores for the boys over here. But yeah, I guess I'll go with the fun pick first. Give me John Gruden. Just give me a football guy.
Oh my gosh.
What do you want me to say? John Gruden would be an amazing fit for Penn State, a guy that comes without any controversy attached to him. Really just stand-up football guy. Really, he'd come in and people want to play for John Gruden. So I'll go John Gruden at the number 1 spot.
G, you can go second.
All right. I'll be serious. I think, the far and away best, like, who could win immediately is Curt Cignetti. I'm a little concerned about his age, but I think for 5 more years at least, like, he's going to be at the top of his game. So, what he's doing at IU, it's incredible. I don't think it's lost on Pat Kraft that his alma mater is going and beating Oregon on the road, and the school he's at right now, which has been a kind of a perennial blue blood, is in the position that it's in. So I have no doubt that played a factor in the decision, and so I think he's going to do everything he can do to lure him away. And I think the donor base is going to try to do the same.
Okay. My first pick is, I'm going to give 2 realistic ones and 1 reach. But my first pick, which I'm pretty biased about, but I would love Dan Mullen to be, and Garrett and I talked about this a couple days ago, love Dan Mullen to be the head coach. Obviously, he coached and led Mississippi State, and one of my favorite athlete ever, Dak Prescott, to number 1 in the country. Coached Tim Tebow at Florida, was with Urban Meyer at Bowling Green, and has just coached some pretty prominent names in the college football world. And I think Penn State needs an offensive-centered head coach with experience and knows how to rebuild a brand. Not that Penn State's brand needs rebuilt, just needs to take the next step. And we'll swing back around. My second pick is a guy who may not have the resume of a major position, but that's someone who's familiar with Penn State, and that's Joe Brady, who was here as an assistant in 2016. Joe Brady has coached Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and really has a resume of helping quarterbacks take to the next steps. If you look at what Joe Brady did for Josh Allen in Buffalo, Josh Allen was not Josh Allen until Joe Brady got there. But I would like Penn State to also have a competent quarterback to pair with Mr. Brady.
Do you have a third? You said you had 2.
No, so a way a snake draft works is
I definitely thought you said you had 2 and then 1 unrealistic one. But maybe it was 2 and one of them is unrealistic. I don't know. Both sound realistic to me. Gosh, I don't think anybody's going to pick my dark horse that I think deep down could actually be the guy. So I won't pick him yet. This dude right here, Urban. Just like he transcends schools, eras. I think he's a guy that I think immediately, given having a great OC and a great DC, would be able to recruit at the highest level. I think he would have immediate buy-in from the donor base. I think the Pagulas of the world, the bigger money backing folks and alums that we really haven't had commit to the program would do it. And I think you would get, he's really 5 years younger than Curt Cignetti. He's only 60 or 61, I believe. The risk obviously is, hasn't been the college game since 2019. And so and towards the end at Ohio State, they were obviously at a very high level. It was slipping a little bit, but that same thing happened at Florida too. I mean, he comes in and he's a 4 or 5 year guy, and I think it would happen right away. So, if you get Urban Meyer, it would at least be a very entertaining 4 or 5 years with him. So that would be my number 2.
Entertaining to say the least.
Yeah.
Beckaroo, give me 2.
Yep, I'm up for 2. So let the record show Urban would have been my number 1 over Gruden, but Garrett had him as his background. I couldn't take that from him.
Thank you, Beck.
Yes, I was really just looking out for you.
We give you a lot of credit. Justin Beck is one of the better people out there.
I'm thoughtful, man. I'm thoughtful.
Yeah. Ladies, look at that mustache.
Right. Yeah. All right. So pick number 2. I really like Manny Diaz at the time here at Penn State. I think that there are concerns with how he ran Miami. Obviously, he was not super successful there and ultimately ended up getting fired, and that's how he came to Penn State as the DC. But everything about him does scream head coach to me. He's a very well put together guy. Everybody that's talked about him speaks very highly of him. And I think that what he's doing at Duke is admirable. I don't think Duke is ever going to be a program that is a tier 1 football school, but he still is winning pretty consistently with Duke. I know it's only year 2, but it looks like he's going to put together another good season there in the ACC. So I don't think that he'd be my first pick. He's probably, like I said, Urban Meyer would actually be my first pick, and I think Cignetti would be 2 for me if we were just doing 1, 2, 3. But Manny Diaz is a name to watch out for. And then because I'm up next as well, another guy that I don't think that I would be jumping for joy about, I'll take Matt Rule. So Penn State guy, obviously loves Penn State, has a good relationship with Pat Kraft. I think, again, it's similar to Manny Diaz in the sense that he's doing all right at Nebraska right now. And obviously he was successful at Temple. But I don't like the idea of firing Franklin and then hiring somebody who is not proven to be on a higher level than Franklin was. Right? I understand that you had to fire Franklin at this point in time, but when you're going out and you're looking for a replacement, you have to look for somebody that is meant to win at a higher level than Franklin, or somebody who is up and coming and you have a lot of faith in and you believe that they can be the guy for the program moving forward. So yeah, I think that's probably where I land there. I'll take Matt Rule as my 3 pick, but I don't think I'd be super excited about that.
I just thought of this now, with Manny, and I've been opposed to I think if he comes back as the DC, it'd be unbelievable, right? He's an unbelievable defensive mind, really kind of a genius. I root for another program who had a very large buyout with a guy who was their defensive coordinator, who went to go coach at Duke for 2 years, and now is back and has them number 4 in the country and maybe the best team in the SEC, and that's Mike Elko at A&M. So I'm not saying Elko, I'm saying the Manny Diaz parallel there would be very, very interesting and has me actually thinking about that a little bit more than maybe I was thinking about up until this point. So interesting pick there, Beck. My 3rd pick would be Alex Golish from USF. Young guy, 41 years old, unbelievable offensive mind, started his coaching career at Ohio State, as a graduate assistant, has built his way up. He's in that kind of Art Briles, Josh Heupel mindset offensively, was the offensive coordinator under Josh Heupel at Tennessee 3 years ago. When they beat Alabama, they were ranked number 1 in the country. Things went south when their quarterback got hurt late in the year, but still won 11-2. Got the USF job. And the more I look into them, USF was a dead program. 1-11, 2-10, 1-11 before he got there. They're 6-0 right now and humming. Has recruited well down there. Just kind of checks a lot of boxes when it comes to, what does Penn State need right now? They need a lot of energy. They probably need someone younger. They need an offensive mind for sure. And I think that's a crucial piece. And so would he be a risk? Has he coached at high level in a high level program as a head coach? No. But he's been with a national title contender calling plays and has probably the best group of 5 team in the country right now at USF. Went into the swamp, and although they're a little bit down, beat a talented Florida team. I think that he would be an interesting guy to look at. And even if we don't get him, he will be a hot name coming up over the next few years for sure.
Yeah, my last pick kind of relates to what you said about Manny Diaz, full circle there. And that's Bill O'Brien. He's not doing so hot right now at Boston College. Really helped out Penn State when he was here prior to Franklin. I don't think they hired Bill O'Brien. But 2 other fun names that come to mind, Ed Orgeron, Coach O, but I don't think Coach O would like to coach again. I just think that would be fun to have Coach O in Happy Valley. Maybe they could create a position for him, just like supervisor Morel or something, just have him around. I don't know. I really like Coach O. And then a third one, this one's kind of wild, but he is from Pittsburgh. He has won a Super Bowl, but he's 64 years old. His name's Mike McCarthy. And I just think that I think we would figure out a way. He would field a heck of a staff. But actually, no, I don't want him as head coach. But it's just a fun name to throw around. He's a PA guy. He's won Super Bowls, coached a lot of prominent quarterbacks.
Another Mike from Pittsburgh.
I don't think his time in Green Bay overlapped with Franklin. Franklin may have been there a year before him, because I think Franklin was there in 2004, and I think he started in 2006 maybe. But nonetheless, some great names.
A lot of stoicism, Mike. Good job. You didn't break character. You didn't stoicism. You were very stoic in that. You didn't break a smile or laugh at that once. I'm worried you're serious.
A little bit. I mean, I don't mind it. He did fine with Dallas. I mean, Dallas just sucked, but he's a great coach. But a lot of names thrown around there.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to update our listeners. Stick with us, guys. I think we compiled a record the other day. I think Penn State is 41-14 since Straight from the Crest started in 2021. Don't fact check me on that, but I think that's correct. Sounds right, because we had some slanderous thoughts of people in the chat, and if you know, you know, of Straight from the Crest cursing. But yeah, Garrett.
2 things. One, I guess I'll start with this. Asking you guys a question. Like, gun to your head, who do you think? Who do you think is gonna who do you think is gonna be the guy? Like, who do you actually, for real? Like, you have to put $1 million on it. Who is going to be the next head coach? Yeah,
I just don't want it to be Matt Rule. I don't think. But I guess that's not the question.
Justin, can you talk into the mic, please? We're having
a little bit closer, like this.
Yep. Thank you.
Good? You're welcome. Give me. Do you think they could get Urban, man? I don't think they could get Urban, but give me Urban.
Wow. Gosh.
What about you, G?
I think if you had to pick one, I think it's going to be Rule. I think they're going to go with the assumption that, I think Kraft's going to go with the assumption of what he saw at Temple and Baylor. And I mean, in doing a decent job at Nebraska now. And obviously, whether Rayola, pans out as the quarterback he was, pegged to be, he flipped him to Nebraska. And so that's something to take note of. And so, I think sometimes you got to go back to go forward, and that's going to be the mentality, kind of reuniting with the past here. And it kind of parlays into my second point I wanted to make. This whole national, I'm sure you guys have seen it on Twitter now, kind of that meme of why would Penn State do this? Shooting the guy. But when it was the media the whole time, it's Franklin sucks. And now it's well, why would Penn State fire Franklin? What the heck? And it's this expectation that Penn State can't do more than what they're doing now is frankly kind of absurd. And part of it is like Penn State's own fault of like the administration like ignoring anything that happened prior to the scandal and ignoring the fact that like from 1970 to 2000, Penn State had like 18 2-loss or less seasons. You know, I think they had 2 national championships, but could have claimed a bunch more. So like, I think the fan base remembers that more than what they've remembered the last 20 years. And so this idea that like Penn State can't do more now in this era of like having support, having money, like I think whoever they hire, there's going to be a big backing. I do think if Rule is hired, the Letterman, the alumni, the donor base is going to be as strong as it's ever been. And in this era, you know, I was just out in Lubbock watching Texas Tech play football. Like that's purely on money, like what they're doing. And they might be a top 6-7 team in the country. I don't know how good their coaching staff is, but they got players and they got dudes. And so that's what it's about. I think regardless, a Rule, an Urban, a Sig would bring in guys. And in the end, that's what you got to do. So, but just want to see your guys' thoughts on who you actually think it'd be, but also like we do deserve more than what we've gotten. I think that the base has turned out and showed out. And I think it's time that, you know, we kind of show that, hey, we can be a top level team and not like always behind Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's Penn State's time to get some fortune rolling its way. But like I said, guys, I appreciate you sticking with us three here. The shows moving forward the rest of the year are going to continue. We're still going to show up. There's still football games going on. That's what we're going to do. It's not going to be as exciting as the last 3 years going 10-2, but there's going to be more things to talk about now than ever. And that's beauty. That's why we started doing this. But appreciate everyone's support. And we will see you guys Thursday for the Iowa preview.